It's a brilliant life tool. It's very inspiring that it helps people right across the age group.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter what your age is. Yes, it's true. Young people can get full recovery. Well, an old person probably can't, and a middle-aged person either may not. Neither may be able to achieve perfect health, but the difference is light and day. So if you're my age now or something and just starting out on this, what can you achieve? Well, an enormous amount.
Enormous.
You can achieve enormous.
Yeah, it's significant. Whereas if you really put your back into it as a young person, you can become quite a specimen. You can go to your natural template, and the method will rebuild your body.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, a young person could go from being someone who's lethargical, depressed, irritable. I mean, I used to see this with the boy I raised, Lucas. He'd come back from school, and he's Dutch, so in Holland they have very strict rules on what you can put in his lunch pack. So he probably wouldn't want to eat in the morning. He'd just got up and had to get off to school early. He'd hardly eat anything, and then at lunch he'd have almost nothing. And he'd come back, and after school he'd be straight off to football. By the time he got back, he'd be irritable, tired, or whatever. You'd give him a little bit of food, get him to do a bit of breathing, and he'd be flying around and relaxed and cheerful. What we noticed with him, if he was irritable, if he was grouchy, we'd just get him to do some practice, and he would calm down. He'd become smiley. He'd become this lovely spirit that he was, this very beautiful personality. You could see it again night and day. He would be an irritable, unfriendly, uncooperative child, and he would turn to just a few breath holds if we could get him to do it, and he usually would do it if we asked him to. He would be relaxed, cheerful, loving, warm, creative, expansive. He would be a different child. He'd be the child that he was. This is the point, is the Buteyko method gives you back to yourself, gives you back yourself to yourself, if that makes any sense. The person you like about yourself. And if we think of ourselves, obviously we have we see the best in ourselves. And when we are ill, that seems like a distant memory. Who was that person that I used to love? Well, that you can have that person back at any age. I mean, that was the thing. Maybe you can't get all of your serious illnesses reversed. You can do a lot, but you can, at the very least, rediscover your self-worth. You're able to value yourself and see the person that you used to be.
You can firstly start feeling comfortable in your body, and that comes quite quickly.
You'll notice that within the beginner's course, right at the beginning, that first moment when you've got enough carbon dioxide in that the organism can relax. That is such a revelation. I saw this with many students. They'd, day one, day two, sometimes they wouldn't feel anything. Some would, a lot would even on the first day. But certainly by day three, if they actually did the practice, you'd see their eyes open and sparkle. You'd see their face relax. They would suddenly look younger. And they would often say things like, God, I haven't felt this relaxed for years. Just to be at ease in the body, which then also, of course, means at ease in the world, at ease in their life, at ease in their relationship, at ease with their children, at ease with their job, or whatever it is, their situation. Once you're at ease in your body, and then you're also at ease in your mind, then the outside world becomes something you can be at ease with. So yeah, you would see that pretty much everybody. It's very rare, and only those who didn't actually practice, I would say. But everybody who practices, everybody, I think I can confidently say, will have that experience within the first 5 days, if they do what they're instructed. So I'm always very suspicious if anyone got to the end of the week and said, oh, they didn't feel anything. It'd be very rare, but if they did, you'd always know that they hadn't actually done the practice. They hadn't done it. They might tell you they did, but they didn't. and you check up on them and you find that actually they didn't really. And then you get them to practice and then they get the effect. Cause and effect.
Yeah. It's a brilliant life tool.
Oh gosh, I mean, if I hadn't, this often occurs to me. If I hadn't have found the Buteyko method in 2011, I don't think I'd be alive.
No, nor would I.
I'd either would have died from the deterioration in my condition, because you don't get better when you have chronic illness. If you don't do anything, if you don't, well, the one thing that will stop and reverse it is raising carbon dioxide. If you don't do that, you will lose carbon dioxide. You will breathe progressively deeper, and your condition will comport with that. Your condition will get worse as your breathing deepens. You will get worse. Everybody knows this who's chronically ill. You don't get better, you deteriorate. And I would have either got to the point that the symptoms of the disease would have killed me, or I would have not been able to bear my condition, and I would have killed myself. And the level of depression would have, and anxiety, which comes with, and depression and anxiety, they come together, seems to me, would have taken me to the point where I wouldn't have been able to bear it anymore.
Yeah, so, you suffered a lot. I know you suffered a lot. It was horrendous. And I didn't realize how much I was suffering. I got to the point where I knew that it was dangerous. So I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was not able to function very long each day. And I was just kind of in a state of, this has to change. I have to find something to get me out of this. That's all I could think. Screaming out there, just send me somebody to help, because I have to get out of this.
Yeah.
There was nothing else. There was nowhere to go.
It's interesting. It was a Buddhist monk that brought you on to Christopher. He taught Buddhist monks, and which is also very interesting.
Well, I mean, the thing was is that I didn't really. It didn't come to my mind to even think about ending my life. I had to actually stay alive. That wasn't an issue. I had to stay alive. The problem was is I couldn't function.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was getting serious.
Yeah, I mean, I remember waking up, it's similar, I think, thing to what you're saying. I remember waking up in the morning and thinking, I can't get out of bed.
Well, I couldn't. I didn't know whether I said things or not. I didn't know how to sort things anymore. I couldn't organize things because I was just muddling everything up. Things were becoming a muddle.
Yeah.
Brain dysfunction was just going. It was awful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did have mental fatigue, but I think it was the physical fatigue that got me the most. I couldn't lift my body out of the bed. And then I remember standing, picking up the toothbrush and just thinking, I haven't got the energy to brush my teeth. The brush would feel so heavy and my hand would feel so weak. And I think, if I can't even brush my teeth, how on earth can I manage my life? And I remember in the particularly early days, soon after I was poisoned, I would walk into town. I was living up in Lancaster at the time, and I would slowly walk into town, because I'm always someone who's been very physical. I was really into sport when I was younger. Physical theatre I did, which is like almost like ballet training. It's so full on, 3 hours of absolute full on, on your tiptoes and, holding positions. I'm used to being very physical. So after I got poisoned, I continued to try and be physical. It didn't work anymore. And I used to sort of drag myself into town, but be so fatigued that I'd sort of collapse on a bench on the side of the road and wouldn't be able to get home. And I'd sit there for hours, just sort of slumped. And I'm sure people walking past me would have thought, well, he's a druggie or a drunk. And if anyone spoke to me, I was so tired, I wouldn't be able to control my lips. I didn't have the strength to mouth the words. So I'd have slurred voice. And I would just wait and wait and wait. And I did notice there was a pattern to my fatigue, is I'd wake up in the morning, not feel so great, but then sort of pick up a bit as I moved my body around. I now realize just moving was raising my carbon dioxide. And I would get to, sort of, 8 o'clock in the morning, think, oh, my day's going to be okay. I'm all right. I'm functioning. And then about 9, almost like clockwork, it would just go off a cliff. And I'd be like, and I'd be like that for the rest of the day. And then at about 6, it was just, there was a bit of a cycle when I'd pick up a bit. So I remember this particular day when I was sat on this park bench in Lancaster. I sat for hours and hours and hours. I couldn't move. I just couldn't move. And I was living alone at the time. There was nobody to help me. And then eventually I just got a bit of strength in my body and finally was able to sort of get myself onto my feet and then shuffle very, very slowly, half a mile home or however far it was, and then slump into a chair. That was my life. At the age of 39, which, I say I went from being someone, I was often almost criticized for being hyperactive when I was young. I had so much energy, mental and physical. So to go from that, someone who just was bursting with ideas, bursting with enthusiasm, and, people would often say, oh, you're too much, Joe, you're too much, give me a break. I went from that to being the guy who couldn't speak, couldn't move, was spent all day either in bed or in a chair, and slept most of the time. There was just no energy to stay awake. Well, now I function like a normal person. I wouldn't say I'm bursting with energy, but I've got enough to do what I need to do.
Well, you've done a lot in the last 10 years. No, it's more actually, isn't it? It's 12 or 13 years that we've known each other.
It's 12 years, yeah. 2011. Yeah. Gone through a lot of stages. Now I function like a normal person.